All right, I show that it is 1 o'clock Eastern time, so we will go ahead and get started. This is Daniel Schlegel, Director of Implementations at Axiom Human Resource Solutions. Today, we're going to be looking at how to customize reports in the system to meet your needs. I have quite a bit to go over, so this session may go just a tad longer than half an hour. If you have to leave before I'm done, I completely understand. And you can always rewatch this session or the end of this session and any of our training sessions, really, on our YouTube channel. Just search YouTube for Axiom HRS or click on the YouTube icon in any of our email signatures and it'll take you right there. If you have any questions during this training, please type them into the built-in chat feature here in GoToMeeting, and I will answer those at the end of the session. Okay, let's get started. Gonna go ahead and share my screen. It should pop up here momentarily. Okay, so once again, we are in our demo company looking at the employee information page, and this is actually where I want to get started because this is actually just a really good screen to use to demonstrate the types of information that you can find. So let's start real basic here. We're going to start with, one of the things that you can customize on like every report here in the system pretty much, and that's the rows on the page. So this drop down here, right underneath, your navigation, the navigation bar tells you how many rows you're currently seeing on the page. So right now we're seeing 1 through 10 out of 203. And in the drop down, you can choose, at least in this case, all the way up to 200. You can refresh the data, and that will bring in the first 200 rows, out of this case, 203. Okay, so next what we're going to look at is everything that you can see pop up here in the column header. So this is the actual name of the column. So in this case, we're looking at the badge column. And we'll start, actually I'm gonna, rather than using the badge column, let's jump over here to the last name column because that's a little bit easier to use an example. So the first thing we see are these arrows over the name of the column header, right? If we click on the up arrow, that is going to sort this column A through Z ascending, or in the case of numbers, it would start with 1 through 9, right? If you click on the down arrow, of course, it's going to go Z through A. You're going to be descending. Now, one nice thing that I will point out is that you can actually sort multiple columns at the same time. So if we wanted to do last name, and then say you have employees with the same last name but different first names, right? If you hold down the control button on your keyboard, you can then sort by another column. So this will be our primary sorted column. And if we hold control and click the ascending button for first name, our secondary sorted column will be first name. So I don't know. Okay, so here's a good example. We have 2 employee bakers here in the demo company, but then we also have a Jason Baker. So because we sorted by last name first, of course, it's going to be A through Z. Then we sorted by first name, our employee bakers are coming before Jason Baker. So that's a really good way that you can sort by multiple columns without having to try to combine those into a custom column or doing something like that. All right, the next thing I wanted to point out, so if we hover back over our column header here, you'll see this G. This G means group by. So when you group by, you're going to be grouping by, in this case, it's going to be by employee. So if we click the G for last name here, it's actually going to group by each individual employee. It's going to take first name, last name, username, employee ID, badge number, all that stuff, and we're just grouping by that specific employee, right? So to ungroup that, we'll click ungroup in any of these. Instead, let's go ahead, we'll group by our, let's see, billing rates. There's a couple of different billing rates. So let's group by our billing rate column here. Okay, so if we scroll back up, we'll see that we start with the employees that don't have a billing rate. That's our very first one here. Then we have one employee that's 175, Looks like we had a lot that had 200, but this kind of gives you, an idea of what you can do with group. You can group employees who have, a similar something, whether that's billing rate, whether, you could do zip code or state they live in, you can group by that. Maybe department, you could group by that as well. Really any of your cost centers that you have set up. That's a really good example of what you could group by. Okay, let's ungroup these again. And the final thing that I'm going to show here on the column header is how to hide column. So sometimes by default, the system will have columns in here that you just don't need. So for example, when I'm looking at this page, maybe I don't care to see this locked column. I don't care if the employees are locked out of the system or not. That's their problem. So I'm just going to go ahead. You just click the X in the top right corner of the column header, and that will hide the column from view. Just like that, it's gone. Pretty easy. Okay, so the next thing that we wanted to look at, or that I want to look at, is filtering in the columns. So that would be using these two boxes here. So we have a number of options in the drop-down here, and these options will differ depending on whether the column shows, alpha characters, so names, cost centers, stuff like that, or whether it shows numerals. So anything that, payroll information that would have to do with numbers, whether it's hours, whether it's dollars, that you get a couple of different options if you're looking at numerical data. So in this case, we're looking at last names, and we have a number of different options here that we'll go over we'll hit the highlights here. So equals means that this is exactly, what we're looking for. So if we type in equals Baker, it's going to show us the employees with the last name that equals Baker. Now, if we say equals BAK, it's not going to show us anything because nothing matches BAK exactly. So it has to be an exact match. We have doesn't equals, and this one you should all probably be familiar with the employee status column, because by default that's always doesn't equal terminated. So in that case, it's going to show you everything that doesn't equal what you type in here. So if we say doesn't equal Baker, it's going to show us all employees who do not have the last name of Baker. Just like similarly in the employee status column, when you say doesn't equal terminated, that's going to show us employees with an employee status of anything other than terminated. So it'll show you active employees. If you have a leave status, it'll show you them. If you have account managers in your system, it'll show you account managers. Just as long as it doesn't equal terminated, that's who you're going to see. We have a starts with. Now, starts with differs in that, we can enter the BAK, and that's going to show us anyone whose last name begins with BAK. So we can now see, again, we just have the three Bakers, but maybe, you also have like a Bakersfield or something like that. Those would show up as well as Baker. So, whatever you type in, if it begins with those letters, you're going to see that. Similarly, not starts, exact opposite. Anything that doesn't start with BAK, you're going to see again. Next one is like. So like says if this combination of letters or this combination of numbers shows up anywhere in this field, show it to me. So if we type in, looks like we have a number of employees that have ALL in their name here. So let's type in ALL. You'll see that if the employee has ALL anywhere in their last name, they're going to be pulled into the list. Similarly, not like is the exact opposite. If they don't have ALL anywhere in their name, it's not going to show them. Finally, let's see here. The other two that I will mention is null. So maybe you're looking for people who don't have anything entered. We're not going to find that here for last name. We'll do that with badge, the badge number. We'll say we want to see all the employees who's null. That means that there is no data at all. Okay, well, that's not going to work for us, I guess. Null and is null really work more for the numeric fields, I guess, than they do for, oh, it's the last name. I'm sorry. I forgot that I changed the last name over. Okay, so if we say is null for the badge, it's going to show us all employees who do not have a badge number entered, right? However, if we change it to is not null, it's going to show us the employees who do have something entered. There just has to be something there in order for them to come up. This is a really good way if you're searching through employees and making sure that your employees have something for a specific field. This is a good way to make sure everybody has something filled out. It's really easy to say, you know, I'm looking to see who's missing badge numbers. I'm going to put is null, and it's going to show me which employees don't have that filled out. Okay, so let's talk about, we talked about how you can sort by multiple columns. Now, the one thing that maybe some of you have ran into before is that you can't actually filter, you know, the filtering options aren't working for you to filter by multiple columns, okay? So what you can actually do is you can create a custom filter for your report. You can come up here, you can click the Add New button, and then we can click Add. So you can say, you know, I'm really looking for, and you can also click on this bar here and we can type in here, so we can say like, so maybe you're looking for something like default job, you know, you can type in whatever, and then you can have and or not that you can use to help set up this custom filter. So really it's almost like a little bit of basic coding for these custom filters, but you can set up multiple, you know, a really big expression and get really specific with what you're looking for in this custom filter. So, you know, maybe we're looking for, let's see, let's start with like employee state, you know, we could say equals Indiana. And then maybe we also want to say, you know, state equals Indiana or state equals Ohio, for example. Because regularly, if you have the employee, you know, the employee's address state column in there, you can only say like equals Indiana or equals Ohio. But in this way, you can say, we can look for both at the same time. So if they have Indiana or Ohio as their address state, if they use settings, then it's going to sort out those specific employees. So if we go to select columns, we search for state, employee address state, we bring that into our view. So here we have Indiana's, we have an Ohio there, more Indiana's and Ohio. So all these employees are going to have their address states are either going to be Indiana or Ohio. So that's how you can use that custom filter. Okay, I kind of skipped ahead a little bit there, but my next thing that I was going to show is how you can actually select columns. So, you know, again, we just come over here to where it says select columns right between filter and export. We click select columns. All of the columns available to you in this specific report are going to show on the left side here under available columns. So you can see here that for this specific report, we have a ton of available columns. Just about all of the employee information that's in the system is available to be brought into this report. You can always click on the magnifying glass and you can type in, you know, generally what you're looking for. So say, for example, we're looking for the employee social security number. We can start typing, this one's an abbreviation for whatever reason, but I know by heart that it's SS and then the $sign. And that'll allow us to bring in the employee social security number to the report. The only thing you have to do is click this arrow. This is the add arrow, and it will put it at the bottom. So it would put it at the very end of the report. You can manage where it's at using these arrows. The single arrows will just move it up and down 1, whereas the double arrows will move it up, I believe, 5 or 6 at a time. So then you can place it wherever you need it to be. So in this case, we'll put it right after last name. We'll then click our select column button, and that has now added it to our report. So now let's say that, even though this report looks like a mess, let's say that this is a report that we're going to use regularly. Let's save that report now. So in order to do that, we're going to click on our settings button right here. We're going to scroll down to the second option, which is Save Settings, and we're going to click that. We're going to give our report a name. Okay, so then we see a couple of other checkboxes down here. We see Default with a checkbox, and we see Run Immediately with a checkbox. So let's talk about the differences between these two. If you check the default checkbox, that means that every time you come to My Employees and Employee Information, this is the view that's going to pop up on the screen. You don't even have to go to My Reports, My Saved Report, and look up Daniel's messy report. All you have to do is go to My Employees Employee Information. It's going to look like this. That is the default view for this specific, for this report, for the Employee Information Report. Most reports that you're making, you probably won't want to make default, but if you change your rows on the page, you change how things are sorted, you might want to save that. Second one, Run Immediately. I recommend to have this one always checked unless this is a report that is going to pull a ton of data. Run Immediately means that just as soon as you click, you go to My Reports, My Saved Report, you find your report, click the play button to access it, it's going to immediately pull in the data. Otherwise, you have to click the Refresh Data button to actually bring the data in. It'll be a blank screen to begin with. All right, so most of the time, you'll put a name, you'll leave default unchecked, you'll have Run Immediately checked, and you'll just click the Save button. Now, let's say that you build another report based on this one, okay? So let's maybe get rid of the badge. Let's get rid of, social security number from this one, okay? Then we can go back to Save Settings. We'll say Daniel's messy report 2, and in this case, we're going to say Save As, because we want to keep our original report the way it was, but we want to save this one as an entirely different report, so we click Save As. And now we have our two different reports that if we go to My Reports, My Saved Reports, we'll see both of them available right here. All right, so now I wanted to kind of show some good base reports for various things in the system. So again, the one that that we started with, our employee information page, this is a really, really good report to use if you need to build a report that involves employee information. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, right? But you can bring in just about every field that has to, that you'll find when you click into an employee-specific profile. Any of these fields that you see in here, just about you can bring into this overall employee information report. So this makes it a really good place to build those reports based on the employee information. The next one would be for those of you who have TLM or timekeeping. Timesheets by pay period is actually a really good one to use too. Whether you use current or previous, that's up to you. Let's change this to our weekly so we see more employees. But you can actually, so if we go to select columns again, you can see that there are a ton of different columns that you can bring in here, including the various pay category columns. So you can see calculated work hours, regular, overtime, double time, holidays, so on and so forth, all the time offs too. So your personal, your sick, your vacation time, you can bring in individual columns for each one of those pay categories to help you create reports based on the previous or the current pay period, whichever one you're really looking at. Similarly, I mean, by default, it shows the raw hours here, but all of the calculated hours can also be found in this report too, including, just your calculated work hours, your calculated time off hours, and your overall calculated hours. So don't think that just because by default it shows raw hours that you can't actually bring in those calculated hours. Now, another really good timekeeping report, if we go to my reports, time and labor and calculated time, is the calculated time summary. So this one will show, by default, again, shows, your total work hours. It shows the pay categories, total time off hours. So this is another really good one or another one that's just really good at being able to make nice time reports. Now, I will say about this one that the time off is a little weird because if we click select columns, we'll see that these time offs are actually work hours. Well, typically your time off isn't work hours. That's why it's called time off, right? So if we're interested in our time off here, let's say, our vacation, for example, if I can spell it right, we'd want to bring in instead this calculated time off hours by and replace. So if we put these right next to each other, we're replacing this work hours by vacation with time off hours by vacation. So if we, just bring all of those in, time off hours. And here's a quick trick that I didn't mention, but probably should have when we were looking at bringing columns into the report. But if you just click the arrow that, points to, or the double arrow here in the middle that points to the right, it will bring all of these columns over into the report so that you don't have to click one each individually if you want them all brought in. You can do the same thing to remove them all too. And we'll probably look at that in a minute when we look at our next report. Then we can bring all of these into the report. Maybe. Oh, that was everything. Yeah, it's not going to work. I wondered why it got really slow all of a sudden. Okay, let's just go back here. Let's try this again, just so you can see the example. We're going to take out calculated work hours by. We're going to search for our time off. We're going to bring all of those over. This should go faster because it's not as many. Okay, so now we can see, we had our total time off hours of 8. It didn't actually show anything, but now when we scroll over, we can see that those are actually vacation hours because now we're seeing the time off hours and not work hours, which is not going to show up under. The nice thing about this report as compared to the previous one, the timesheets by pay period, is that you can actually change this to a calendar or a date range if you're looking for more than one pay period. So that's why I like to show this one as well. Because the timesheets by pay period, you can only focus on one pay period at a time, whereas this one you can focus on an entire calendar or date range. Okay, so a couple of the payroll reports that I recommend for those of you with payroll. If you have spoken with me at all about payroll reports, I always recommend the Earning Deduction Tax Listing Summary report. And make sure you get the summary, that's important. Now this one starts off, it doesn't actually look that useful by default. Let's actually show some information because it has the payroll name, we have pay date, we have record type, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't actually show any employee information, right? So usually the first thing I do for this report is I click this double arrow pointing to the left to get everything out of there because that's usually usually not what I'm looking for. Then after that, I'm looking for employee last name, I'm looking for employee first name, and then whatever, earnings, deductions, taxes you might want to put in your report, you can go from there. So if, we're interested in regular hours and amounts, we can put that in. If we're interested in salary amounts, earning amount, salary, we can put that in. So on and so forth. All of your earnings will be there. All of your deductions will be there. All of your taxes will be there, including taxable wages. So this is a really good, you know, just kind of catch-all payroll report that you can use to build a whole lot of useful reports. And then the other one, the other payroll report that I'm going to mention is going to be our retirement plan report. Nice thing about this one is that if your retirement plan has some, you know, if there's a specific earnings list that's being used for your retirement plan, you can actually pull up columns using that, you know, using figures from that list. Otherwise, it actually does contain, it contains a lot of the same information as the earning deduction tax listing summary report. Another nice thing about this one is that I believe it contains actually a lot more employee information that you can bring in than you can in the earning deduction tax listing summary report. Okay, we're running a little short of time here. Like I said, I thought this was going to go a little past 30 minutes, and it's definitely going to. But the last thing I kind of want to touch on is creating custom columns in your reports. This particularly comes in handy in payroll. I've used it in timekeeping before as well, but really, it's, you know, in payroll that you see a lot of these. We're going to use our earning deduction tax listing summary report again to kind of demonstrate what we can do with a custom report. So let's say, you know, we kind of want to break out, let's say our overhead. We kind of want to break out our overhead. So we're going to bring in our first employees. Yeah, we'll do first name, we'll do last name, look up their gross pay. We'll do salary, do some regular earnings, overtime. Let's say bonus. Okay. Actually, that's not the gross column I want. Sometimes, I'll explain why. So this gross wages column, and I usually don't remember which one does what. The gross wages column actually breaks it out by pay statement. So, you know, if you have multiple pay statements or multiple payrolls in the same report, you're going to have multiple rows per employee. So if we get rid of that and actually bring in just the one that says gross rather than gross wages, that should summarize all the information for everybody. Yeah, there we go. So now we see, and let's actually say, for our gross is not null, so we're only going to be looking at employees that actually have data, have some payroll figures here. Okay, so let's say that for whatever reason, our bonus isn't considered in our overhead, all right? So in this case, you know, our gross includes our bonus, but we want to figure our overhead without having that bonus included. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to settings. We're going to go all the way to the bottom here and go to custom settings. This will take us to our custom columns tab, where we are going to enable custom column number 1. We're going to give it a label. This is going to be actually the column header, okay? Call it overhead. We're going to choose our type. We have, you know, you can have regular text, regular numbers, money, dates, and time. In this case, we're going to choose money. Going to choose a format. There's a whole bunch of money formats that we can choose here. Most of the time, the one that you're going to want to choose is going to be either 2 decimal, or if you want that $sign, you can scroll down to with $sign 2 decimal. Okay. And if you want this column to sum at the very bottom in the totals row, you'll want to check that box off. And then from there, it's a matter of finding what functions you need and what columns. So in this case, and you know, again, just kind of like with the when we previously went over building a custom filter, this is like basic coding as well. So we can, here's some of the functions that we have, like you can make if statements, equals. We also have or not. We have some date functions. We have numeric functions. So in this case, we'll be using add. And then another important one is value as well, because that takes, in this case, if you know what a string is, everything starts as a string. So we're going to take everything, we're going to turn it into actual numbers for the system to use. So that value is very important. And we have a whole bunch of other stuff that can be used as well. So in this case, we start with add. You'll see that says value. So our first value here, we're going to click on function again, and we have to say value, because in this case, we're going to take the contents of one column and turn it into a value that the system can add. The next step is to actually look under columns. So in this case, it's going to show you every column that can be used in this report, which in this report, it's a whole ton. The easiest thing to do here is hit your Control F to find in your browser, and then we're going to start with salary. So employee salary, that's not right. That's not what we want. So we'll keep going. That's hours. Not what we want either. That's quantity. That's not right. Earning amount salary. That's what we want. So we're going to click right here. This is the internal, internally, this is what the system refers to for this specific column. So we're going to click on that, and that's what we're looking for. So we're saying we're going to add, right now we have set the value of salary. We're going to have to do another value here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this so this will go faster in the future. And then next we'll be looking for regular. So here's our earning amount regular. Earning amount overtime. And then I have another one. I don't think I did. I think it was just salary, regular, overtime in our example here. Okay. So those are the three that we're looking at. So we're saying add the value of salary with the value of regular and the value of overtime. So at this point, we're going to say, oh, it's still moving around. We want to click on our use settings button here at the bottom of the pop-up box. And you'll notice nothing changed. Well, that's because now we have to add that custom column to our view. So you click select columns, and even though we named it overhead, that's not what you're searching for. You'll always be searching for custom column. So in this case, this is our custom column 1. We'll go ahead, we will add that to our report here. We'll say select columns, and now we will see that our overhead is only showing the addition of salary, regular, and overtime. The best example here is probably the second one, Maria Torres. We can see that her gross is $1,115.38, which is made up of $865.38 of salary and $250 in bonus. And in our overhead, it's just that $865.38 of salary. So that's a really basic custom column. But the thing is that a lot of the custom columns that I have made actually really are pretty simple. If there's something that you're looking for that you might think might be a little more difficult, don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we can try to figure it out with you. Because I've also set up some more complicated ones as well, especially for like benefit plans that use a number of nested if statements, if you know what that means. Which just basically means one if statement inside of another if statement inside of another if statement. So kind of like Inception if statements, for those of you who like that movie. So yeah, just like anything else, if you're trying to build something, you can't quite get it right, don't hesitate to contact us about it. Okay, well, that is everything that I had scheduled to show as far as customizing and working with the reports in the system. Again, if you have any other questions, I don't believe I saw anything pop up in the chat. So if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to give us a call here at Axiom, send us an email. And once again, like normal, the recording of the session will be posted to our YouTube channel within the end of the week here. So either by the end of today or sometime tomorrow. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.